So I thought Moonfall would be similar to the old 90s movie Armageddon, but Armageddon is actually much more realistic. Let's talk Moonfall. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. I'm going to talk to you about Moonfall, a new sci-fi space action drama movie that's coming at the theaters on February 4th, 2022. It's a summer movie coming to us in February, but it's got all the hallmarks of a summer movie. It's got big effects, big sound, Earth kind of threatening events, and pretty bad dialogue. So my hot take is actually, I think you should probably pass on this. I was a little disappointed with some aspects of the movie. I liked the characters, I liked some of the action and some of the effects, but I did not like the story. The story just was kind of all over the place. It felt also unnecessarily long. And I mean, I knew summer movies were generally implausible, but this feels like another level of implausible. So my recommendation is to pass on it. I think if you go in just kind of wanting something entertaining and not really thinking much about it, then this might be a fun way to spend the night. But overall, I didn't really like it that much. I mean, there were things that I laughed at and things that were fun, but overall, it was just a little bit too out there for me. So I'm going to talk to you about the film, some things I like, some things I didn't like, and then go into the story and the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in this review. If you don't want to know anything about the film, you don't want to have anything spoiled for you, then turn this off now. Go check it out when it comes to theaters on February 4th, 2022, even though I kind of said you probably shouldn't see it. You know, if you don't want to know spoilers, you don't want anything about it, go see it and then come back and hear my thoughts. But hey, maybe you'll disagree with me. Maybe you really liked it. And if you did, I'd love to hear it. But for those of you who just want to know about the movie, about my thoughts, and also don't care about spoilers, then let's keep going. So in Moonfall, the story is absolutely bonkers. In Moonfall, you have the orbit of the moon, for some reason, slowly descending and coming to Earth, and no one knows why. And so the film is kind of about NASA and this kind of conspiracy theorist type scientist trying to figure out why it's happening, how to stop it, and how to ultimately save the Earth. Because if you can imagine, if the moon gets closer to Earth, that can cause some very terrible things to happen on Earth. And so the whole movie is about them trying to figure out why the moon is falling, how to stop it, and also to muster up the resources with the kind of world collapsing to try to get this mission done. And the explanation is crazy. I'm going to go into that in the ending. So first, I'm going to go into things I liked about this movie. The first thing I liked is the characters. I thought the characters were actually a pretty fun collection of quirky individuals in this film. You have a lot of kind of your tropes in movies. You've got a disgraced hero. You've got like a strong girl boss. You've got a crazy scientist. You got a bunch of like other characters playing different roles, but they're entertaining. They're very different, and it's kind of fun to see them around. And there are some really funny ones. Michael Peña has a really funny character. I think my favorite was John Bradley as Casey Houseman. He's essentially a conspiracy theorist type scientist whose crazy idea actually kind of ends up being the explanation for the moon. He's kind of a really out there character, and he gets to do a lot of really interesting things and says a lot of very funny lines. So that leads right into the second thing I liked, the humor. There were a lot of really funny moments in this movie, and I think especially from John Bradley, especially when he gets to kind of live off the fact that now his theories are right, and he gets to kind of show all these NASA scientists like how he came up with all this stuff. And he also is just a funny character. Like, he has funny lines. He's got kind of a very relatable type of person, and so I liked him the most. There were a lot of really just kind of funny random scenes in this movie, and as you would expect, it's like a summer movie, so there are always going to be good one-liners. There's going to be kind of really silly situations, and those were enjoyable. I definitely laughed out loud more than I expected to. And not because of the movie. I laughed out loud at the humor more than I expected to. I also laughed out loud at some of the things that happened in the movie, but the humor itself was pretty good. And the third thing I liked is some of the effects. I mean, the weird thing is that this movie had a very mixed bag of effects. There were some really spectacular set pieces, some really amazingly well done scenes, and then there were some not so well done scenes, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But for the set pieces that worked, there were some really impressive ones, especially in space. Like, it's a movie about the moon falling. There's going to be a space scene, and the space stuff was pretty cool. It was pretty imaginative and interesting looking. So I did like some of the effects. Now, things I did not like: the effects. There were some scenes that they looked bad. I mean, it wasn't really cheesy, but it was just noticeable enough that it was CG that it kind of broke my suspension of disbelief. In a movie like this, you really need to kind of have a suspension of disbelief. That there were some scenes when the Earth was being destroyed that clearly looked computer generated, and it was weird because those would then be juxtaposed by really well done sets. So there was one scene where like a tidal wave was coming off the coast and kind of flooding the coastline, And the tidal wave coming in and all the cars being moved, those definitely look like a computer generated type of scene. But then you have a scene where Patrick Wilson and John Bradley are in a hotel that's filling up with water, and that is clearly just a really well done set. So that is an exciting scene. It's kind of interesting to see. But then just outside in the periphery, you have this like clearly computer generated background. So it was a weird kind of push and pull there. There were a lot of other scenes that really just kind of, it almost looked like a video game, like a really nice video game, like a high res next gen video game. But it just, something just looked a little off in a lot of them. So the second thing I did not love is the writing. There's some really bad, really corny lines in this movie. I mean, it's a typical summer movie, except I think the writing is actually worse in this movie than a lot of them. You know, you have some of your cliched lines. There's one line where like Halle Berry standing up to her boss and telling her that she has to like shut down this mission, and she's like, "No, I work for the American people." Things like that. They also had like some weird kind of corny movie type security things. Like at one point, I think they called the level of clearance that Halle Berry needed to get the information about the moon threat as like Q level clearance, which I wasn't sure if that was just a silly name or if that was like a nod to like the QAnon conspiracy side of things. It felt there was just some really bad writing in this movie. The third thing I did not love, and I'm gonna go into that in the ending, is the craziness. Like the story just makes absolutely no sense. Like there's really no way that this story, even like in a fun summer blockbuster movie, like the timeline doesn't work out. The way that they get up there doesn't work out. The explanation is just bonkers. I mean, look, if you want like the most out there type of summer action movie you can see, then this might be for you. Yeah, for me, I thought this movie would be like Armageddon, like the Bruce Willis action movie from the 90s. But Armageddon actually seems way more plausible than this movie, which is saying something. And the last thing I did not love is there's kind of unnecessary storylines. There's a whole side story in this movie involving the kids of the astronauts going up into space that just felt wholly unnecessary. It almost felt distracting. Like it would come up and I think it was supposed to give you some kind of emotional connection to the characters, but I just thought it kind of took away from the movie. Some of those scenes were some of the unrealistic scenes I talked about. Some of those scenes had pretty bad CG. I think it was supposed to show you like the effect on the ground that this mission was having, but it felt just like very implausible already. And also it kind of made this movie feel longer than it needed to be. Like it felt like that whole storyline could have been cut out. I don't really know how much it added to the movie itself that you couldn't get in like other scenes just showing the destruction and the effect that was happening. And it turned this movie into a pretty long one. Like those scenes felt unnecessary, and that made the whole movie feel kind of unnecessarily long. And they distracted from the main mission, which is what I'm going to talk to you most about in the ending. So the ending, and this is where there will be major spoilers for the movie. So if you don't want to know the kind of the secret of the moon and what was happening, turn this off now. But in the end, what we find out is the moon is a mega structure, I guess. This is a theory that was built up by Dr. Casey Houseman, who's played by John Bradley. And his theory is that the moon is this giant structure built by aliens. And so it has this kind of like outer shell, and then inside there's some sort of like power source in the moon. I don't really know why he came up with this idea, but I guess his theory is that the moon was built by aliens. It's kind of too perfect. You know, its orientation is too perfect. It's kind of alignment with the Earth and kind of what it does for the Earth is too perfect. So he thinks that this thing was built by aliens. And so he's been observing the moon to try to figure out how to prove that it is a megastructure. And what he finds when he's observing it is that the orbit starts to decrease. So the moon starts to kind of fall. As the moon falls and the information gets out, the Earth starts to kind of descend into chaos. But through this, NASA tries to get a mission together. NASA is led by Jo, who's played by Halle Berry. She was an astronaut earlier, who was an astronaut with Brian, who's played by Patrick Wilson. They had a mission together that ended poorly. Patrick Wilson's character was kind of disgraced, and Halle Berry's character kind of got through unscathed. So she kept rising up. Patrick Wilson's character was just kind of disgraced because of this. But in order to save the world, they all have to come together. So Jo, Brian, and Casey are all going to the moon to save the world. But while they're doing this, you have this other storyline that involves Brian's ex-wife, his son, her kids who she's had with her new husband, played by Michael Peña, and Halle Berry's son and their Chinese au pair, who are all trying to get to this base in Colorado in order to be with Halle Berry's 4-star general husband who's in a bunker. And they're going to go there to save themselves and be protected in case this moon mission doesn't happen. And I think they made up an Air Force base. I think they say they're going to Colorado Springs, and they call it Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is just a little different from Vandenberg Air Force Base. But that's where they're going. They're going to Colorado Springs to go to this secret nuclear base that apparently they can just roll up and call their 4-star general dad, and he'll get them in. For the rest of this review, I'm going to kind of just focus on the moon mission because that is kind of the most interesting one. In terms of the other people, the side story, I guess, the story that I thought was kind of unnecessary, it goes kind of nuts. So basically you have Brian's son, Joe's son, and Joe's son's au pair. They all leave for the moon mission and try to get to this Air Force base. And while they're doing that, they get carjacked by some people who are carjacking people on a road. I guess they're trying to get supplies. So they carjack them. Luckily, these 3 people who are not really dressed for the snow and are able to track down the carjackers' camp, re-steal the car, drive to Vail to meet up with Halle Berry's husband and his 2 daughters, and they all get together in a car to try to get to this Air Force base. But before they do that, the carjackers who originally carjacked them are upset, and they find them and try to steal some more stuff from them. They fight them off. There is some sort of like car chase that is very Initial D-like, because our heroes are kind of sliding around in the snow as the effects of the moon are happening, and there's like destruction everywhere, and they're trying to slide around the snow while also avoiding the carjackers in a 4x4 truck. Eventually they make it to a tunnel where they kind of wait out the destruction. Oh, and also Joe's husband is in the military bunker. There is this plan to kind of nuke the moon if it doesn't go well, and they're about to do it. Joe's husband like has the key in there, and then he decides not to, and he pulls a gun on like the entire military facility to stop them from nuking the moon because he believes this ragtag mission can work. Again, that seemed also very unlikely. I'm pretty sure if he pulled a gun in this installation, he probably would have been shot, and then they would have just taken his key and continued the mission. But it's a movie. He does that. He stands up for the Earth. So back to the moon mission. In the rocket, we have Joe, Brian, and Casey, who are all going to the moon. And it's pretty easy at this point because the Earth is like, I don't know, very close to the moon. Like the moon is like basically almost touching the Earth. It's really close. So they just have to shoot up a little bit. And then even though there's some issues with their shuttle, when they get above the Earth, the moon's gravity pulls them to the moon. So they get to the moon, and what you see is in the moon, there's this big hole, this like perfectly drilled hole in the moon. That is where this like AI kind of nanobot alien machine comes out and attacks things occasionally. Brian and Joe's mission earlier, where Brian became disgraced, they were one of the first things to be attacked by this alien nanobots. And another mission that NASA put together later to go to the moon was also attacked. So you kind of knew about these things. So what they have found out also is that these nanobots seem to be drawn to electronics. They seem to be drawn to electrical devices. I think it's a defense mechanism. They can go out and destroy these electronics. So Brian, Casey, and Joe fly to the moon without any electronics, which seems not realistic, but it's okay. We'll allow it. And so they get to the moon, they set up this nuclear device, and they're ready to blow it up to take out these nanobots. They're going to draw them out of the hole. They're going to get there and kind of surround this nuclear device, and they're going to blow it up. Everything will be great. But what happens is when they draw the nanobots out, the nanobots ignore the nuke and go straight towards the shuttle. And everyone's trying to figure out like what's going on. And then they realize that there's a couple electronics in the shuttle, namely the nuclear detonator, which they destroy, and a cell phone that is in airplane mode, which they then destroy. And so then the nanobots leave, and they figure out, okay, so the nanobots are drawn to both electronics and people because they didn't take out the nuclear vehicle, even though it was electronic. They went straight for the shuttle because there's people in there. I mean, sure, why not? So now they decide, okay, so we have to be the bait. We have to get this nuke down there to take out these alien nanobots. So they get in the shuttle, they attach the nuke, and they head down into the moon. And the moon has this big hole that is 20 kilometers deep, I guess. And so they go down in the hole, And what you see when they're going down the hole is that the moon's the hole is like built in metal, and this is where Casey's theories come to be. His theory is that the whole outer mantle of the moon, like the outer crust of the moon, is a metal hull, and underneath that is where the like energy sources and all this like alien technology is. And so when they're going down, you see that the side of the moon is all metal, and they're descending into the structure. They go 20 kilometers in, and boom, they're in the moon's core, which seemed not that realistic because I looked it up. Apparently, the moon is 2,159 miles across, and so in kilometers that would be like 3,500 kilometers. They went 20 kilometers in, so I guess the core of the moon is kind of like on the very edge. It's this weird kind of like lopsided loop. So once they're through the hull, inside there's all these like gyroscopes that are surrounding a white dwarf star that is, I guess, the power source of the moon. And so the gyroscopes are there to kind of keep the moon stable, and also the gyroscopes have all these like these implements of life. There's some sort of like crops in these gyroscopes and other interesting things that kind of show that the moon is trying to, I guess, sustain life somehow. But so now they're near the core, they get attacked by these nanobots, and so the shuttle starts flying itself. Brian can't figure out what's happening, but the shuttle flies itself into a special inner chamber that then closes, and the nanobots are pounding on, but they can't get through it. So in the inner chamber, Brian has a vision. And in this vision, he finds out why the moon was built. So I guess in his vision, he sees our ancestors, like humans' ancestors that were probably millions of years ago, thousands of years ago, at least probably millions of years ago. They were this super advanced society that built this kind of perfect world that had no war and no want, and everyone was doing great. And they're able to do all this because they built this advanced AI that kind of controlled everything. And so everything was great because of this AI. But eventually the AI went evil and turned on them. So the AI started attacking this, our, I guess, ancestors, and trying to kill everyone because they didn't want to be, I guess, serving this inferior species. So our ancestors built these megastructures to try to go and seed life out in the universe to preserve themselves. And so they built these giant structures that they seeded with a little bit of genetic material and tried to send them out. But the AI discovered them and blew up everything except for the moon. The moon was the one thing that got out, and the moon then flew across the universe, found our solar system, and created the Earth with its moon magic, and then seeded the Earth with life, and has been, I guess, watching over the Earth since then. And Patrick Wilson finds all this out because I guess the moon's AI is good AI, even though we're trying to stop the bad AI. The moon's AI is good AI. It doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, I guess maybe they learned from their mistakes and programmed a better, like a version 2.0 that doesn't try to kill them. I guess we can go with that. But overall, it's a little bit of a silly explanation, but we'll just keep going. So after Brian has this vision, he gathers Jo and Casey, and they all go back to the shuttle that was destroyed when they were kind of fleeing the nanobots, but now it seems to be repaired. The moon building used like a beam of light to repair the shuttle and upgrade it. So now the shuttle's great, everything's fine. They'll get in there and they fly out to go confront the AI. They kind of realize that now they need to draw the AI out, and the moon AI told them this. They need to draw the AI out so they can then detonate the bomb and get rid of the nanobots once and for all. So they get in the shuttle, they fly around to draw the nanobots out. The nanobots start trying to attack the shuttle, but then the moon turns on like all these ships that were dormant. All their guns come out and they start shooting the nanobots, which I understand why they didn't just fly in a circle for a while and let the guns shoot the nanobots. But I guess, maybe they were just there to distract. So eventually the shuttle gets into that tunnel that went into the moon's crust. And so they're flying up there. And this is when Brian says, like, he has to arm the bomb. He has to stay behind to draw the AI to him. And then he's going to blow up the bomb, which is going to destroy the AI and save the world. And so he's explaining this, and he tells Casey to go and like make sure everything's fine as he keeps flying. When he turns around, Casey is in the bomb kind of shuttle, and he's closed the door so no one can get through there. And he says basically like, Brian tries to stop him, saying he shouldn't do this, but Casey's like, look, like the world needs you. You have the secret of the moon, because Brian was the only one who the moon AI talked to, so he was the only one that had this vision and kind of understood, I guess, the whole history. And so Casey's like, you survive, I will do this. And he like then detaches the shuttle, waits for the AI. The AI nanobots come and attack the shuttle. He blows up the bomb. The other shuttle is like not that far away, maybe like 100 feet, a couple 100 feet. But I guess the nuke doesn't kill them. It propels them out of the moon at a very fast pace. And I guess thankfully that they propel out of the moon at a fast pace and are able to then slow down before they plummet right into the Earth, because the moon is like right next to the Earth. So they use their parachutes to stop and they're fine. After this, you see the moon start to stop descending. Like it's real close to the Earth. I think it was about to hit the Earth, and then it starts ascending back up into its orbit. And the interesting thing here is that what was happening is as the moon was getting pulled towards the Earth, the crust of the moon, the rocky crust, started to break off, and that was like raining down on the Earth, causing massive destruction, just like endless meteor storms. And now when the moon goes up, like because all that crust is broken off, it is this like metal Death Star looking structure. So I guess now everyone knows that the moon is a hollow moon, and it's a mega structure, I guess. So the moon starts going back up, everything's fine. Somehow Jo has a satellite phone still that works, even though like all the satellites have been destroyed. She calls her son, who also has a satellite phone that works, and checks in, makes sure everything's okay. And also the shuttle that Jo and Brian were in has a tracker that apparently also works, even though like all the communication systems have been taken down. And so this helicopter is able to find Jo and Brian, pick them up, and then go and find all the kids somehow, even though like the world is destroyed and no one really knows where they are. But they're able to find them. Everyone reunites, everyone's happy. A few people died, but those were emotional scenes, and the world is saved. And then you have one other scene where you're in the consciousness. You see Casey. He loads into the consciousness. So and in this consciousness, which is this very like white room, or like white plane, because there's really nothing in it. He's standing there, and then he sees his cat, and then he sees his mom. The two things that he was like cared the most about in the world. And his mom starts talking to him, and it's clear that his mom is like the AI construct communicating with him. And the AI construct tells him that they scanned his consciousness before he died. So now his consciousness is in the moon AI, the good AI. And so Casey says something like, so we saved the Earth, and then the AI is like, we should get started. So I guess there's more they have to do. Maybe they're going to start rebuilding the Earth, trying to fix it up, because it was pretty decimated. But I guess there's enough technology for satellite phones and helicopters to work, so they're doing okay. But in any event, now Casey is in this moon AI for eternity with his mom and a cat. So maybe that's what he wanted. That doesn't really seem like a great end to me, but you know what? If he's happy, that's fine. And so that is Moonfall. Like I said, the story is kind of nuts. I hope you got that from my explanation as well. If you just want like a fun popcorn summer flick, you might enjoy this. I don't think I would have even enjoyed it as a fun summer popcorn flick. I liked a lot of things about it. The characters were fun. There were some funny moments, and there were some good effects. But overall, the story just was, I think, too distracting, and some of the writing was too distracting as well. So I think it's a pass. But hey, you know what? Go see it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agreed or disagreed. Love to hear your thoughts. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Please check out my other content. I've got other movie reviews, interviews, unboxing videos, and recommendations. Thank you.